6 exercises, 1 gym, and less than 90 seconds of rest between each set. That was heavy shoulder day under Arnold Schwarzenegger, the exact old-school bodybuilding system most lifters today would tap out of by the third movement. But the exercise that actually built his legendary width isn't the one most people would guess, and it isn't the one that burns the most either. Stick around, because by the final rep, you'll know exactly which movement on this list your own shoulder day has been missing.
Those are the kind of exercises to me that were like, you could not replace them with any machine. This was it.
It starts with the overhead barbell press, and Arnold isn't easing into it. He's loading heavy from the very first set, because his entire philosophy was to shock the muscle before it had time to protect itself. His shoulders are already carrying years of wear from pressing, and everyone training beside him knows this exact lift has beaten him before. So the question isn't really whether the bar goes up, it's whether raw strength is actually the secret everyone thinks it is. He's pressing weight most lifters in that gym wouldn't even attempt for a single rep, let alone for the 4 or 5 sets Arnold has planned. And he's doing it standing, no bench to lean back against, no seat to steal an inch of leverage from.
One of the main things, of course, in order to create size and to create muscle growth, which will sometimes the body will hit a wall. And what that basically means is that the body is saying, look, I know all your tricks. I know you're going to start first with bench press. And then I know you're going to walk over to the chin-up bar and do chin-ups. And then I know you're coming back to the bench press, and then you go to the chin-up bar and come back to bench press. I know that routine. I know exactly everything you do, and I am prepared for that. So you have to go and use the shocking principle.
He presses it clean, set after set, and for a moment, it looks like brute power is the whole story. Except it isn't, because the movement that actually built the width people remember wasn't the press at all. It was the exercise right after it. And Arnold performed it in a way that almost no one in that gym was copying correctly. That next movement is the barbell upright row, and here's the detail everyone gets wrong. Most lifters pull the bar high, toward the chin, chasing the traps. Arnold pulled it only to chest height, keeping the tension locked on the delts instead. It's a small technical shift. It's also the exact reason his shoulders looked wider on stage than his measurements on paper ever suggested. And here's the detail that separates golden era training from almost every modern program. Arnold didn't count reps off a printed sheet. He trained by feel, chasing the pump until his shoulders physically refused to lift the dumbbells any higher. Franco stood behind him through most of these sets, not spotting for safety but counting failure points. Arnold was too locked in to track himself.
I need a little bit more delt to it, a little bit more shoulders so to get the proportions right. So what you do is you exercise and put those deltoids on. Whereas an artist would just slap on some crayon on each side, and does it maybe the easier way. We go through the harder way because you have to do it on a human body.
And this is where Arnold used to say something a lot of lifters forget. Bodybuilding is an art, not just a sport measured in plates and numbers. He wasn't only chasing size, he was sculpting angles, trying to erase the one flaw a mirror will never show you. Because a mirror only shows the front. And the front was never what worried him. Judges in that era weren't just scoring size, they were scoring balance, symmetry, the way one muscle group flowed into the next from every single angle of the stage, which meant a flaw invisible to Arnold in his own bathroom mirror could still cost him points he'd never even see coming. Nobody in that gym was going to tell him which muscle needed the work. He had to catch it himself, alone. The same way anyone chasing real progress eventually has to, which meant every exercise left in this session had one real job: build a shoulder that looked finished from angles he couldn't even check himself. That's why the next movement isn't pressing at all. It's side-lying dumbbell raises, one arm at a time, done flat on a bench. Almost nobody trained this way back then. Standing lateral raises let you cheat with momentum, swinging the weight up with the hips. Lying on his side removed that option completely. There was nowhere left to hide and no way to fake the rep. From there, Arnold moved straight into seated lateral raises, and this is where the fatigue should have ended the workout. His shoulders were already burning from the press, the rows, the side raises, but sitting down removes the last cheat left in the entire body. The little backward lean lifters used to launch the weight with momentum instead of muscle. Every rep from here forward was pure isolation. No shortcuts, no momentum, nothing to blame but the muscle itself. This is the part of golden era training nobody puts in highlight reels. No spotter cheering, no crowd watching. Just the quiet math of sets and reps that never show up in a magazine photo. This is exactly why so many lifters today build impressive fronts and forgettable backs. They stop training the moment it stops looking good in the mirror. That's the trap, and Arnold refused to fall into it. He'd rather leave the gym unable to lift his arms above his head than leave one delt head undertrained. And this is exactly the point in the session where most lifters would rack the dumbbells and call it a day. Except Arnold wasn't even halfway through the real work yet. If you've ever wondered why shoulders like his simply don't exist in this sport anymore, hit subscribe, because the next story I tell you makes even this workout look easy. Before we continue, something for every man over 40 watching right now. If you are tired of your body falling behind your drive, there is a completely free training program built for men over 40 who refuse to slow down. Built around exactly what you are learning here. The link is in the description, or scan the QR code on the screen right now. It's completely free to our subscribers, so go and get it now. Coming back into this session, Arnold moves to dumbbell front raises, and here's the problem nobody in that gym accounted for. His front delts are already pre-exhausted from the overhead press at the start of the workout, which means these front raises aren't building the front delt at all. They're finishing it, pushing it past a point most lifters would call quitting time. This is deliberate pre-exhaustion training, decades before it had a name in any strength manual. And it's the exact reason golden era shoulders had that round, capped look instead of the flat, front-heavy shape you see on lifters who only press and never finish the job. Then comes the exercise most people in this story skip completely: bent over rear delt raises. And this is the quiet detail that explains everything you've heard so far. Remember the flaw Arnold was chasing when he called bodybuilding an art? The one a mirror could never show him. This is it. He'd bend forward at the hips, lift both dumbbells out to the sides in a slow arc, and hold the squeeze for a full second before lowering. It's an unglamorous motion, nothing anyone photographs for a magazine cover, but it's the exact rep that made the difference between a shoulder that looked finished and one that only looked finished from the front row. The rear delts are the one part of the shoulder the audience never looks at directly, but they're exactly what a judge sees the second a bodybuilder turns his back for comparison. Put those 6 movements together: the press, the upright row, the side raises, the seated laterals, the front raises, the rear delt work, and you get the legendary golden era shoulder workout old school bodybuilders still talk about. No machines, no shortcuts, just barbells, dumbbells, and a training partner willing to tell you when a rep didn't count. And this is the part of the story most people never connect back to the training. Months later, backstage before Mr. Olympia, Arnold stands beside Franco Columbu for a posing photo that would become one of the most famous images in bodybuilding history. 2 men, same gym, same brutal shoulder days, and the width in that photo wasn't genetics alone. Franco was shorter, built like a tank from a completely different training background. And yet, standing next to him, Arnold's shoulders still framed the whole photo. It was 6 exercises, done in the right order, for years, including the one he almost didn't bother finishing. So here's the real legacy of that heavy shoulder day. It wasn't the weight on the bar that made Arnold's shoulders legendary. It was refusing to skip the angle nobody was going to clap for. Golden era training worked because it respected the muscle from every direction, not just the direction that looks good in a mirror. That's the whole difference between training to look good for 30 seconds on stage and training to actually be complete. So think about your next workout. Are you training your shoulders the way Arnold did, every angle covered? Or are you doing 3 sets of the same lateral raise and calling it a shoulder day? Do you think Arnold's back would have looked as complete on that stage without Franco pushing him through the sets he wanted to skip? Tell me below. Take the one exercise from this list you've been avoiding, probably the rear delt raise, and put it back into your very next session. That's how old school training actually works, one honest set at a time. If this kind of golden era breakdown is what keeps bringing you back, subscribe, because the next story isn't about a workout. It's about the year Arnold almost lost everything he built inside that gym. And with that being said, I will see you in the next one.